Hi, it's Sylvester, and content warning, I'm going to be talking about some things that some people might be a little bit sensitive to in this video. I'm going to be talking about pregnancy, infertility, childbirth, the idea of having children. I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to touch on miscarriage and abortion, pregnancy scares. I'm having a very frank discussion about my experiences of having a uterus. So if you're sensitive to any of that sort of stuff, this is not the video for you, or proceed with caution. I am a trans man, I have a uterus, and I have been asked, actually that's a lie, I haven't been asked, but I imagine some people might wonder whether or not I ever plan on having children. This is something I was asked a lot when I was younger. Now that I'm in my 30s, people don't seem to ask that question anymore. It's almost as if I've hit an age where people are like, well, it's too late. If you wanted to have children, you would have had them by now, which obviously is not true. There are many people who have children in their 30s and older, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't get asked that question anymore. But when I was younger, I got asked all the time, as a person with a uterus, do you plan to have children? How many children do you want? And I always had the same answer. For my entire life, I always said, no, I don't want children, and people would always say to me, you'll change your mind as you get older. You'll hit an age and just suddenly want children. And that never really happened for me. I still don't want children. It's not that I don't like children. It's just that I don't think I would be a very good parent, honestly. And children are a lot of work. I used to have a cat, and even taking care of a cat was a bit too much at times. It is stressful as hell trying to keep a creature alive, trying to take care of another living thing is very stressful. And so I can't imagine how difficult it would be to have a human child needing me to take care of them. It exhausts me. I get fatigued just thinking about it. So no, I don't ever plan on having children. I don't want children. I've never wanted children. But the thing is, I'm a little bit upset that I don't feel like I have the option. Again, I've never wanted children, but I feel like if I had money, if I wasn't in poverty, there's a possibility that maybe I would have wanted children at some point. It's just I've been in poverty for pretty much my entire life, or at least low income for my entire life. And I don't feel like having a child is really an option, or has ever really been an option. Now, I'm not saying that low-income people can't have children, or that people in poverty can't or shouldn't have children. It's just that I feel like, personally, if I were to have a child, I would want to give them the best life possible, and to me, that means helping them out financially and having enough money to really give them a life that I would want to give them. And so I feel like the ability for me to have children was taken away by the fact that I am in poverty. If I wasn't in poverty, there's a possibility that I would have had children by now. There's a possibility that I'd be a dad. So when we as a society talk about reproductive rights, I feel like finances are something that we don't often talk about. The fact that there are plenty of people out there who would love to have children but are financially unable to have children, that is part of the conversation of reproductive rights. Those people don't have the right to reproduce. They want to reproduce, but they can't because they're in poverty or because they're low income. And again, I'm not saying that everyone in poverty, there are people who live in poverty who have children. There are people who are low income who have children, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but there are lots of people who financially just can't have children, or can't give their children the life that they want to give them, and therefore feel like they can't have children. And again, this is something that we as a society should be talking about more. Anyways, I don't know if I even would have the option of having children, even if I had money, even if I wanted children, I don't know if my uterus is capable, I don't know if I'm able to get pregnant, because trigger warning, I'm going to talk about sexual abuse. I was sexually abused when I was 19 for over 3 months. I was repeatedly raped by this person over and over and over again for over 3 months. And I was not on birth control, and I did not get pregnant. And I feel like that, I feel like I should have. I'm very thankful that I didn't, because that would have added to the trauma of what happened to me, because I was not ready to have children at the age of 19, and so I would have had to have had an abortion. And, abortions can be very traumatic. I've never had an abortion, but I know people who have had abortions, and from what I've heard, it can potentially be a very traumatic experience. It's a very emotionally taxing experience. It's an experience that I don't wish on anyone. I know that it can be a very awful decision to have to make. And I'm very pro-abortion. I don't think there's anything wrong with abortion, but I do know that if it were me, if I had to make that decision, I do feel like it would weigh on it would upset me. It'd be a very upsetting thing to have to decide to terminate a pregnancy. I heard a rumor back when I was in the small town that I come from, Listowel, Ontario. I was living there for a bit after I got away from the man who sexually abused me, and I heard that there was a rumor going around about me that I was pregnant, that the man who sexually abused me had gotten me pregnant, because after I got away from the man who sexually abused me, I ate my feelings. I ate a lot. I binged on food constantly, and I gained a lot of weight very, very quickly, and it did kind of look like I was 9 months pregnant at one point after I got away from this man, because I was eating so much and I was so bloated that my stomach was so bloated that it looked like I was pregnant. And so again, I heard that there was a rumor about me that people thought that I was pregnant, and so some people think that I had a late stage or late term abortion, and that's just not true. And I feel like me saying that is going to make these people believe it even more, because it sounds like I'm just denying it out of shame. But I promise you, first of all, there's no shame in having an abortion. I know it's a very difficult subject to talk about, and a lot of people are very judgmental about it. And so I would understand why some people would think that I'd be ashamed, or that I wouldn't want to talk about it if it happened, because I wouldn't want people to judge me or to tell me that I was going to go to hell or something like that. But I also really like getting sympathy from strangers on the internet. And so I assure you, had that happened to me, had I been forced to have a late-term abortion, I would have made a video talking about it by now, because it's just I take my traumas and I take my experiences and I turn it into content. That's just what I do. And the same applies for if I were to have had a miscarriage, because again, I was sexually abused by this man for over 3 months, and there were allegedly rumors about me that I had gotten pregnant, and so I'm sure some people might assume that I had a miscarriage, and again, I didn't. I just straight up never got pregnant. I was sexually abused for over 3 months, no birth control, and I just didn't get pregnant. And I know that might be hard for some people to believe, but I guess my uterus just doesn't work. I mean, it works. I menstruate when I'm not on testosterone. If I weren't taking testosterone, I would have periods. But I don't think that I'm actually capable of getting pregnant, or it would take a lot of effort to get pregnant. It would take a lot of time and a lot of trying if I were ever to try to get pregnant, because again, over 3 months I was sexually abused and I never got pregnant. And so I've never had a miscarriage. I've never had an abortion. I am grateful for that because, again, those are some very traumatic experiences that I'm glad that I don't have. But I guess I have had pregnancy scares. Like every time I've ever had sex with a person who has a penis, which is not that many times. Sorry if that's too much information about me, but I am really not very sexually active, and I never have been, and I haven't had sex with that many people in my life. But pretty much every time I've had sex with somebody who has a penis, I've gotten scared afterwards, thinking that I might be pregnant, even though protection was used. I was still always scared because I've never been on birth control ever in my life, because I've never been sexually active enough to justify being on birth control. So it's always been a fear lingering in the back of my head every time I have sex with a person who has a penis. I'm always scared, like, what if the condom didn't work? What if the condom fell off and they didn't tell me? Like, I get really scared. And so I've taken a handful of pregnancy tests in my life, like legitimately basically every time I've ever had sex with a person who was assigned male at birth, and then my period is like 1 day later than I expect it to be, then I immediately went to the store and bought a pregnancy test because I was always so scared of getting accidentally pregnant. It was one of my biggest fears, and one of the reasons why I've never been that sexually active is because I am scared of accidental pregnancy. I know that abortions are an option, but it's not it's not preferable. Nobody really wants an abortion, you know what I mean? Like, it's something that you have to do. It's not something that anybody's excited for, or somebody, you know what I mean? Like, it's an unpleasant experience. And so I've never wanted to get pregnant, and I've always been so scared of accidentally being pregnant. Anyway, that's all. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Stay frosty. Bye.